set it up late, so thank you for indulging me on that. And yes, it's been quite a week, so I guess I don't have a lot of topics, but actually I suppose there are some big topics to sort of talk about, of course, starting with the events in Christchurch. Normally I talk about Japan, but I shouldn't be smiling right now, but I see Mr. Cordychep is saying he was busy putting on his trousers, which I was actually. So yeah, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk, it's the 8th anniversary, of course, of the March 11 earthquake and tsunami in Japan. So there is some kind of dark stuff which I don't want to linger on, but I'll share my thoughts. And I've got some stories if I've got some time. I do have some fun projects going on which I want to share some information about, and maybe do some tunes, so we'll see. First of all, just checking out who's in the room here and seeing the comment from the beginning. We've got Odie Jr. saying good morning to you, Odie Jr., good to see you. Kang and Kodos. Sorry about the pre-show music, I've just been I've gone back to setting up just beforehand lately, so apologies for that. Milchman 2, I'm already too late for the pre-show drinks. Yes, I'm sorry about that. Kang and Kodos commenting on the gym video. I've got friends, actually I've noticed that I'm trying to remember her YouTube name, but Sarah, the half Swedish, half Japanese girl, she's been posting a lot of kickboxing videos lately and her crazy vegan gym workout routine. And that made me think, yeah, that looks, actually I really quite enjoy watching other people training with kickboxing. It's quite fun. And plus I've got a friend who also does bouldering, and he posts videos, and I'm like, yeah, you know what, once in a while I should do that. Plus it's good to check myself, and it's true, when I watch the video I'm not doing what I think I'm doing, or I see mistakes, so it's good, worthwhile doing, so I posted that. Yes, I love that you love the sound effects. I love the sound effects too. When I'm kickboxing, I'm actually doing it to try to get the sound that you hear, that boom sound every time I get kick and punch as hard as I can. It's about getting that rhythm, getting the whole body hitting in the sweet spot on the pads. But also the way that the trainer talks during it, especially the Thai guy that you saw in the first half of it. He's got a really nice rhythm that I'm very used to, so it's always like dun dun dun, and he always he says dun as you hit. Now I'm in the habit, whenever I'm like at work on the computer and I'm clicking, I'm always going dun dun dun. I copy the Thai guys and the sounds that they make when you hit pads. It was fun, so I'm glad you liked that. I'll probably put those up every now and then in that case, since people don't seem to bother by them. It feels a bit narcissistic to actually go and post that sort of stuff, especially when I know I'm not that good. I mean, I've got practiced for a while, I've got the basics down, but it's fun for me, and yeah, I actually find it quite fun watching the video myself. You know, so yes, I'm glad that's appreciated. Thank you for that. Marin Lagos, good to see you. Good evening to you. Mr. Cordychep, I was indeed putting on my trousers. Thank you for pointing it out to everybody. Sergeant Bilka, good to see you. We've got where is the Boom Master? People are asking. James Kelly, hi. All indeed, good to see you. Phoenix 787, what's up? Not far away from the Hanami now. Thank you again for organising that. Phoenix 787, great to see you. We've got Martin Orlando, good to see you. Well, welcome. It's great to see a new name every now and then, and thank you for finding my channel. Honestly, it seems like lately not many people are finding the channel. That's why I've been posting shorter videos, although I haven't done that in the last couple of weeks. So thank you very much for watching, and remember, you can, if you @Mark Hiko-Simon, it'll pop up orange to me in the screen that I'm looking at. So if you ever want to ask me a question or want me to discuss anything, please go ahead, and welcome to the show. Of which you are participating. We've got Quinn Rankid, I just missed out there, by the way, so welcome. One leg on, one leg off compromise, indeed. What else have we got? We got Channel Ralph, yay, great to see you. The J Vlog, good to see you. And yes, indeed. And I think that's it. Barringer, good morning to you. We got cars going by outside. Mr. Cordychep sees no kickboxing videos. I don't post them on YouTube. Right, that's a bit too much. You guys don't want to see my kickboxing videos on YouTube, do you? I've got them on Facebook, so if you follow me on Facebook, they're on there. But yeah. So there's a lot to unpack, but I feel like I should probably get straight to the Christchurch thing. I know that Victor was calling me up today, and he wanted to hear about that. You don't do Facebook? Well, I might post it on YouTube. You know, YouTube is doing YouTube stories, so I guess perhaps maybe that's what I should go with that. So I must admit it's a very upbeat beginning for a very somber topic, but let's start with it. So first off, I'm from New Zealand. My father is from Christchurch. My uncle, my father's brother, and my grandmother are from Christchurch. I talked about, I remember 8 years ago, in February 2011, a month before the Japan earthquake, Christchurch, half of Christchurch was pretty much destroyed is too big a word, but was damaged as such. For example, both my uncle and my grandma, their houses were sufficiently damaged that they couldn't live in them anymore. They lost their houses in that quake. And I do remember, I guess we all talk about when we were kids. I always remember parents talking about they remember where they were when man first stood on the moon, or when such and such happened. I think the events in my lifetime that I really remember when I first heard about them were the Challenger disaster in 1987, the 9/11 attacks in the US. I know exactly where I was when I first saw those. The Indian Ocean tsunami, I remember that, and the earthquake in Christchurch, the day that happened, and when it became increasingly clear how devastating that was, and spending really a day before I could verify that anyone that I knew there, my relatives, my loved ones there, were okay. And I remember being very stressed out over that. And then of course there was 8 years ago this week, we had the 8th anniversary of the March 11 earthquakes. Of course since then there's been all sorts of other events. There have been terror attacks, there have been things where all sorts of things happening throughout the years, kind of like this in different ways. So yeah, what day was it? It was like Thursday or Friday? It must have been Friday. Yeah, that this attack happened in Christchurch. And it was, where to begin? Just in terms of, like, from my perspective, I still can't. Now we have a bit more information as to what happened. I couldn't understand. I couldn't actually comprehend. I couldn't process. We had, of course, in Christchurch, near Christchurch, in a town called Aramoana, in the 1990s, when I was still in school, there was a mass shooting in a small community by basically a guy who collected guns, who was sort of, the typical sort of loner gun collector type guy. In a very small town, went house to house in the town, shooting people, and, they got him, and unfortunately, this happens from time to time, in different places. But this was very different, and I guess the two things, the fact that these were mass shootings within places of worship, and they were in two different places, 50 New Zealanders were killed, basically, and possibly more. One, I couldn't process that. That's more people than died in the earthquake. That's, that's a huge tragedy, and it's kind of funny, you think, when you hear about something like this, that you're supposed to be angry, or you're supposed to wonder who did it, and some people were, but I must admit, when I heard the news, it really took me 24 hours or so before I could even think about who did it. I was so just sad for the people who I knew would be affected by this, because the thing about Christchurch, I think of Christchurch as a 300,000 person city, is now 450,000 person city. What's remarkable about Christchurch is that although it is a big city, 450,000 is not a small town. It's the second, third biggest town in New Zealand, but the personal ties there are really close. It's a kind of a joke in New Zealand how everybody knows everybody, but in Christchurch it's really true. Everybody pretty much is a degree of separation apart. And this is why in New Zealand, you just don't have so much crime as you have in most places. You don't have any corruption because you can't get away with it, but that's why people act nice. You have to be nice. It's a survival mechanism in New Zealand. If you're a dickhead, you get really in trouble. But this is true all over the place. But it's particularly true in Christchurch. And when I was married in Christchurch, when I went down to Christchurch to pass the bar, and I stayed with my grandma, it's probably the longest amount of time I ever lived down there. And I really realized, as much as I think I know New Zealand culture, and I know New Zealand, like, Christchurch it's kind of just a different level. People are just so nice, and so open and friendly. For example, I remember going to a shop in Christchurch to buy a rugby book, and they didn't have the particular book I wanted, so the manager of the shop, and this is a very New Zealand thing, but particularly a Christchurch thing. When I went and asked her, does she have it, and she realised she didn't, she took me out. She walked me 200 metres up the road to a competitor's shop and took me in and asked them if they had the book for me. They, you know, there's no thought of doing other than looking after each other in that city. That's really how it is. So the idea that something like this could, for a start, the idea that this could happen at all was incredibly, you know, and realizing immediately that when you're talking about, you know, given that almost everybody you meet in Christchurch, you can figure out if you've got a connection to Christchurch, you've got a connection to almost everybody in that city. It's crazy. So knowing that this many people died all at once, and the profound impact that that would have on this city, I mean, that still is still rebuilding and recovering from the earthquake. This was incredibly sad to me. The other thing that I actually found incomprehensible on that first day was the news that 4 people had been arrested. Now, we've since found out that they've released the others and found out that there was no connection and it really was this one person all on their own. But to me, it's one thing to have kind of a nut job guy, but to have 4 people, for it to be an organised attack, I couldn't comprehend that. So that was actually as shocking to me. I couldn't understand how in New Zealand you could even have 3 or 4 people that would agree to do something like that, let alone one. So I guess what was happening to me was I was at work when I noticed somebody messaged me about it on social media, and then I started seeing the news, and I was sitting at my desk at work, and I had the weirdest reaction, which was I remember the nervous kind of it was an adrenaline rush during 3/11 8 years ago, and it was an adrenaline rush which kind of, I was just nervous and excited and stressed out for like 2 or 3 months. When I say excited, you know, my body was like preparing for not knowing if I had to evacuate the country, or, you know, about with all the misinformation and stuff like that. So it's weird, you know, your body goes into action mode and there's nothing you can do to get rid of it. And that time, that stress that you experience when you're in that state for a long time, a lot of people left. A lot of people who stayed got really messed up by it, actually. And you know, it becomes a form of trauma. I began to understand the sort of trauma of people who are close to sort of big events like this experience. When it happened, the quake happened in Christchurch, I was incredibly antsy and worried. The conclusion that I came to really quickly with this was that I think what I've learned is that social media, too much information, is actually psychologically really bad. Frankly, it means that we are not just, if it used to be that we would read the news about events, then with television and whatever we would kind of watch and observe events as they happen. But with social media nowadays, we actually participate. We actually, you know, as much as we can be remote and on the other side of the world from these events, we actually get wrapped up in them, and I mean as victims. And yeah, I'm sitting there trying to process everything, and I realized at my desk when I'm reading this, thinking, you know, I was just unable to process it. That was the thing. And I realized all of a sudden I was at work crying at my desk, and I mean, I didn't cry. You know what, when I saw the tsunami, I think I probably did get a bit like that during the 3/11 earthquake. Whether I've ever said that before either. I didn't get like that with the Christchurch earthquake. I was stressed out and worried. I mean, I was too worried to really have a thought like that. I was just shocked, and I stayed up days watching 9/11. But I don't know, I was just sitting at my desk and I wasn't even realizing that I was doing it. I was kind of sitting there trying to figure out like just trying to figure out what's going on, and I realized, shit, I'm crying. And then I realized that my uncle's there, and you know, I guess I wasn't worried. I mean, knowing how it went, I wasn't worried about the safety per se, but I was profoundly worried about the impact that this would have on my family who were there in Christchurch. So I went and called up my uncle. It was like 4 p.m. by then. It was about 9 p.m. in Christchurch, and when the thought came to me, and I thought, geez, it's going to stand up, I went and called him up. And he was already, it's New Zealand, Christchurch, it's 9 o'clock, he's already going to bed. It's funny, I called him up and he picked up the phone, and we both realized we had no idea what to say. you know, we just kind of paused there. I just said, look, you know, as everyone, please, you know, we're thinking of you, please take care of yourselves. And then I didn't know what else to say other than I said, look, turn off the TV, stay away from the computer for a while. And he told me to do the same, and I kind of realized, you know, I think that was the best advice we could have given each other, actually. There's this thing where, you know, you feel like, in a way, it's like supporting the thing, where it's like what you're supposed to do is to try to follow and keep up with the information. But frankly, I don't think we've kind of gotten into understanding yet how the information age makes us participants in what's happening in a way that's, you know, really as harmful to the people. You know, as I don't think it's you feel guilty not following the information, you know, and it's really, and you become so wrapped up in it. And I know this from the other times I've been wrapped up in this, and realizing that later on I was as affected by the way I became obsessed with following the information about it, that you know, than the event itself. And so I kind of sat back after talking to my uncle, and I promised myself, okay, one, I'm not going to talk about this on social media, I'm doing it now, but this is part of me explaining how I'm processing it as much as anything else. I'm going to resist the urge. I know how I'm going to go through the phases on this, and you know what they are. They're shock, sadness, anger, denial. I forget the phrase, you know, I forget the sequence, but I know what's coming, and I'm going to resist the urge to. I'm going to be sad and quietly. I'm going to not lash out in anger. And that's where I got to the next day, when I started thinking about the person who did this and hearing about what his agenda was and why he did it and the circumstances of that person. And I'm tempted to get into it now as well, but I realize that what I've got unresolved emotion about this, that I want to lash out. And I want to say things which are driven by emotion, which I realize that, you know, it's what the person himself is motivated by, unresolved internal emotion that he wanted to lash out by hurting people. And this is what I think we have as a human thing. And I want to restrict, I want to be self-aware about this and not become that myself over this. So with that in mind, I'm in terms of how and why, there's no real good reason for this or what this was. The person who did this, you know, did it for attention, and you know, clearly had the agenda of wanting to share their own propaganda. I mean, the fact that they claim to be motivated by eliminating immigration and radical ideology, and yet clearly they're of almost in result indifferent ideology. And after deciding to do this thing, they immigrated. They didn't do it in their home country. I mean, I'm half Australian. I'm not othering Australians over this. This person went to a country probably because they thought that country is more open and more trusting, and, you know, people are just nice, and, you know, the security is much more lax in New Zealand. And this person took advantage of that to go and kill 50 innocent New Zealanders. You know, it's pretty infuriating. The other aspect of this is that I love political debate. I believe that all ideas, even repugnant ideas, are valid and should be discussed openly. But there again, I can tell you now that if I see people sharing the objectives of this person, and I know people who do, who share the same sort of thinking, who I don't think for a minute would ever do anything like what this person did, but I must admit, please don't share those views with me for a while, because I think while I am tolerant, including of views like this, all directions, you're just going to get blocked, and I'm going to try very hard to resist responding to anybody about it. Yeah, you know, the other request I have from people watching, I have not watched the video. I tell you, I don't. The idea that watching the video, and I haven't watched the video, I have no intention of watching the video, and I've seen people asking, is it really so bad, you know, to watch the video? Like, you know, does it mean you're supporting the guy? And perhaps that's true, but yeah, at the same time, I mean, don't discount how harmful these sort of things are. The ISIS videos, the snuff videos that ISIS were putting out. The kid in Yokohama, the half Philippine, half Japanese kid who decapitated, stripped naked and decapitated a kid that he was bullying by the ocean in Kawasaki, was obsessed with watching ISIS videos and then went out and did it. Not saying that watching these videos will make you go out and do it, but clearly this kid was scarred by what he had seen, and you know, and I know from hearing other people who see these things that this is what can happen. So first reason not to watch it, of course, is you know, it's just not good. It's not good for anybody. The second reason is, frankly, it's the objective of this entire thing, of this person, was probably to become famous and to have everybody read his, you know, manifesto and watch his video. So look, if you wanna get this guy, which I do, if you want to lash out, don't lash out at Australians, don't lash out at, you know, white supremacists. Well, you know, maybe in the right way, but not, don't you know, if you want to lash out at this guy, I think the right way to do it, and the way that New Zealand is doing it, which is correct, is don't say his name, don't share his name, don't share news about him, don't share his video. If you see the video there, that's what he wanted, so flag it, you know, get that shit off the internet as fast as possible. New Zealand courts are, you know, in spite of the fact that his face and his name is out there, New Zealand courts are suppressing his face and his name. I hope that stays the way all the way through the case, and I mean, frankly, he's going to be in jail for a long time. I don't support the death penalty, even in a case like this. But you know, this person should disappear. You know, and what I think you can do as part of showing solidarity over this is supporting us and just making this person, and you know, and frankly, you know, the toxic ideology that led to him disappear. You know, report it, flag it. So that's what I'd ask people watching this to do. You know, getting angry about it, and lashing out at someone else, perpetuating a cycle. It's not the right way to do it. Stay calm, block. You know, that's the only way, if you ask me. The other aspect of this, I guess, when I was processing this, and where I'm still a little bit complicated about this, I haven't seen the Prime Minister's speech. I've really avoided news about this. I've checked headlines, just checked the top level news about this. I heard that the Prime Minister did a great speech about it, which is, you know, good. And she said something which, she said that, you know, don't think of this as Muslims, don't think of this as immigrants, you know, they are us, they're us. Great thing to say. I mean, I'm almost annoyed that it has to be said. This is the thing. It's sort of like, you know, to me it's like, don't even say that. Like, these were 50 Kiwis. It doesn't matter, you know, where they're from or what their religion is. I suppose we look for ways that we can connect with it. And I guess I'll share a little bit of my own, the way that I relate to this, which is that the reason I you know, in a very modest way, that I support refugee NGOs in Japan, and that I, you know, I lend my support to these sorts of things are that, you know, in my own family history, my grandfather was a refugee. I've mentioned that much before. He's a refugee. Again, he remarried very old, so you know there's a lot of time between myself and my grandfather. But he came to New Zealand as a refugee and settled in Christchurch. And he and his family, you know, went to a temple that was not a Christian religion. It was a Jewish temple, and at that time in Christchurch, there were like 30 or 40 in the whole city. In those days, there would be absolutely no mosque. So I guess if this event had happened 50, 60 years ago, that would have been the Jewish temple getting targeted. They were the others in those days. And, you know, it would have been my father, it would have been my grandfather that would have been subject to this. The thing about when you're such a small minority in such an anglicized city, the onus that my own family felt to assimilate, you know, rapidly, you know, which they did. I mean, even the first generation, my grandfather, he became a rugby test referee. He actually held the world record for the number of international rugby test matches in a row, consecutive test matches in a row refereed. you know, president of the Canterbury Swimming Association, president of the Chess Society, became mayor of a town later in life. These people came in and, you know, were grateful. We were escaping a situation just like what the people in Somalia were escaping from Somalia, who were wrapped up in this, or the people from Iraq who ended up in New Zealand, or from Afghanistan, or from Syria. They were in a place where they were in physical danger, where politically and socially there was, you know, there was their position in the society was just, you know, these were ordinary people. What little I know of their background in Romania was that, you know, there was a lot of massacres and there was a lot of persecution happening, and they were modest. They walked all the way across Europe. They went to Britain, and they got on boats and they went to New Zealand. It's a small part of my heritage. You know, I was raised Church of England myself, blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid. But you know, it's part of the assimilation, I suppose. But you know, the people who settled in Christchurch, my Christchurch family, or a part of them, were from this sort of a background, and it's really easy to think that these people, you know, 50 years ago that would have been me. That's me. It's not they are us. Doesn't need to be said. I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned, when I see Somalis who you know, trying to look out, who have families who are trying to look for a place to be safe, I'm proud of the fact that I'm from a country that is that place, like other countries. So yeah, you know, and that's what this is, and that's what those people are. They are literally, I can relate to that on a first person basis. Just the fact that they look physically different, or that they have a different religion. I mean, hell, my own family, I've got relatives with, you know, at my wedding, we had Catholics, we had Protestants, we had Jews, I joked, when my mum asked me why it wasn't a Church of England ceremony, I joked, you know, well, it's either secular or Islamic, you know, which one do you want? I was serious as well. I would have taken either one. So, yeah, you know, look, it's a terrible tragedy, but this is you know, this is what othering, meaningless othering. Frankly, by someone who himself was an immigrant and an outsider. The only dangerous immigrant was the guy who did this. The Australian politician, by the way, who's been speaking up for this, that guy shouldn't be voted out. He should be charged. He should be put in jail. And I mean that sincerely as well. So anyway, that's me going to start to get angry again. I'm not going to do that. So anyway, that's that off my chest. I haven't talked about this actually since Friday. I've just kind of kept it in. I haven't been posting about it. I'm not going to post about it. Yeah, Kang and Kodos, there you go. I was like, the person who gave the ceremony, Justice of the Peace, was a Jewish relative, and you know, Catholics, Protestants. I did get this is why I'm so secular on everything as well. When I became a lawyer and I had to have the New Zealand Church of England, so you know, and I was raised Church of England, and when they have the people swearing on the Bible, then they become lawyers, and I didn't. I took the secular one. It's just like I didn't see a point in taking sides on this. For me, I think it's wonderful to have such a, you know, a background of people with different, you know, different backgrounds, and that I can draw and relate to all of them. I think that's wonderful. So it's like, yes, I don't have Islamic background, but I don't think that's relevant. You know, I think I almost wish I did. You know, when my refugee ancestors left Eastern Europe, some of them who didn't go to New Zealand went to Turkey, because at that time it looked safer than the Russian Empire to go to the Ottoman Empire. I mean, that's how, you know, that the Ottoman Empire was actually tolerant as hell. Didn't work out well for them. They all died not long after, but you know, and it turned out New Zealand was the right choice, and it is, and it should continue to be. This is, you know, so look, just incredibly sad for what happened there, and you know, not just thoughts and prayers. I mean, look, this is really going to hurt that city for, you know, a long time. There are individual, you know, murder stories. There's beautiful things. Was it Beautiful Creatures? There's a movie about a single murder that happened in Christchurch in the 1930s that still has a profound impact on that city. You know, so I feel terrible for everyone there, everyone affected by it. You know, and let's I don't know, not let it happen again. You know, that's pretty much that. And you know, and reach out and consider, you know, if you're starting to buy into any of the ideology that you know, that affected the person that did this, you know, take a good look and have a good think, and you know, don't go there, and don't react with anger to this. Please do me a favor and just reject this, you know, wherever you see it. That's the request. So that's that. Damn. I'm going to move on now, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say about this, because I don't want to, you know, carry on about it, but I really feel for the people there, and I, you know, yes, moving on. Well, here we go. So there's been a warning about the Rugby World Cup. That there's not going to be enough beer. If you're serious about wanting to host the Rugby World Cup, international world rugby officials have told Japan that you're going to need 6 times more beer than you would have for a regular soccer match, and this is accurate. And by the way, I'm tempted to look at the comments and get into the comments, and I'm tempted to discuss them, but you know, I'm not going to, because I want to more or less control my own response. But by the way, the question there from Dan H about how he was able to move 2 mosques and keep going. Well, the police who arrested him, I was just reading the story about the police and who got him today. You know, heroes. They were for out-of-town police at a conference in town, and they sort of figured out, they saw the car, they rammed it right away, and the car was wired with bombs, and they still, you know, they got the guy out. They did an amazing job of catching him. And yeah, you know, it's just, that's crazy. But anyway, back for the beers, back for the rugby. There were, yeah, they've warned, look, if you see people singing, they're not hooligans. It's not like soccer. We don't have hooliganism in rugby. Make sure you have 6 times more beer. This is true. When we had the Bledisloe Cup a few years ago, I've had a couple of matches involving New Zealand and Australia here, where I remember standing in a beer queue next to 2 rugby international players from Australia, like, you know, Joe Roth, famous like fullback wing for Australia. I was chatting to him for 40 minutes in the queue before the game, trying to get a beer, and they sold out all the beer before the kickoff of the game. I'm against the drinking culture of rugby, but yeah, you know, it's one of those things you're supposed to have with rugby. And, you know, we don't have punch-ups in the stands, we don't have riots, we sing, we have fun, and you know, Japan doesn't have enough beer, so they've already guided them to cut people some slack when it comes to being a little bit rowdy, a little bit noisy, and drinking a little bit too much beer, because it's part of the sport and it generally works out okay. So that's one thing. The 8th anniversary of the March 11 quake happened this week. I guess when we get to the 10th anniversary, maybe I'll spend some more time reflecting on it more deeply. The rebuilding in Tohoku really hasn't progressed very far. These towns were already, you know, struggling to hold on to their young people, and frankly the slowness with which some of them chose to rebuild really meant that the young people in those towns had no choice but to move into cities, and they haven't come back. So there's been a lot of focus this week on how little the rebuilding has happened. The other aspect of this that is a little bit infuriating is that you know, right after this event, Tokyo won the Olympics, and a lot of the construction companies that had sort of earmarked wanting to go and support the reconstruction of Tohoku ended up competing for all of the construction work happening in Tokyo for the Olympics, and it's been clear that the preparation for the Olympics has damaged and hindered the rebuilding of Tohoku. And in a sense now, because it's cyclic, because it wasn't rebuilt quickly enough, people haven't gone back, and it's meant that the area really is, the damage there is going to be long term. I could tell my story. I guess I'll probably hold on. I've told my story before about, you know, how I experienced the quake. I actually shot a video inside the office where I was working, which was a company I don't work anymore. I probably shouldn't share it, and it's not a very good video anyway, but I was like, geez, I had a handy cam nearby, and I shot in the middle of the quake. Actually, I've never shared it before. Yeah. The main thing I think I've shared the story about, you know, with the nuclear accident. For all the hysteria that was happening, the idea that I was going to kill my family if I stayed here, that I was hearing from anti-nuclear hysterics afterwards. Points to reflect. I mean, you know, for the hysteria that happened, and that was again politically and agenda-driven hysterics by people outside, frankly, that allowed them to feel justified really attacking people who lived here, who were not backing up their narrative that this whole place was irradiated and going to become non-livable, which obviously it wasn't. The continued, I think the biggest fallout to consider, here's something to consider, that I think the biggest impact globally from the nuclear accidents that occurred in Fukushima are not the radiation caused by the fallout of the Fukushima reactors themselves, but actually the fear of nuclear power that have resulted in, including Japan, I mean, the shutdown of all nuclear reactors, which I think was justified from a safety perspective, but now they're building to standards that would withstand a repeat of the tsunami and earthquake event that happened in Fukushima. But what's really happened is that we are now in a situation where we're being told that if we don't reduce current carbon emissions by 45% of current levels by 2035, the consensus of the IPCC, which is the International Climate Science Global Data Gathering Organization, the latest view is that we will have a runaway greenhouse effect that will be practically impossible to reverse by 2035 if we don't get 45% less carbon emissions starting from now. The only way to achieve that, and I say this as someone who's done a job, who worked in renewables policy consulting, who's actually, if you understand how grids work, and the intermittent renewable sources like wind and wave power and solar are wonderful, and there are great technologies that come out to make them more viable as long-term and large-scale plugins. There's storage, there's equalization technologies, but still the two best ways to replace carbon-based power generation and energy, hydropower, dams, building lots more dams on lots more rivers, which Japan does have a lot of, and nuclear power. You cannot resolve the nuclear climate change. You can't have a new Green Deal that's serious about tackling climate change without nuclear power being central to it. And frankly, even with the risk, and I'm from a very anti-nuclear country, and I live in Tokyo, and I've been downwind from the Fukushima nuclear power plant, and I never left the country when this happened with a newborn kid at the time. So I lived the danger as much as anyone in the world can say that they have. And in spite of all of that, the danger to my child's future and to everyone's children's future is much more from not having nuclear power plants running than with them. So, obviously safety is a priority, and obviously all forms of renewables, to the extent they can be increased, is great, but you've got to use what you have now. So I think what I hope is that if anything, if we can go back, we don't focus on the nuclear hysteria anymore, because the dire predictions about the nuclear accidents that followed the quake never played out, and now the earthquake and the nuclear accidents becoming forgotten. I think people should start reflecting about, that didn't come to pass, and frankly, even if it did, the climate change situation now is so dire that frankly we are the frogs in the boiling pot, pretty much giving up the future for our kids by this elegy, which Germany has in particular, caused by this tragedy against that. So I'm not pro-nuclear per se. I just think if you are an environmentalist and you care about climate change, you need, this is the most important thing that you need to be lobbying for, is more nuclear power for now, until we have better technologies or other technologies to replace it. So yeah, anyway, terrible event, huge scale. One of the best surf spot I've ever been to was right in front of the Fukushima nuclear power plant. I've told the story about that before. I'll tell it again maybe on the 10th anniversary, but yeah, the world is moving on. Jesus, this is depressing. We've got another story. The next one says I was coming home crying every afternoon. This is actually talking about working at Uniqlo in Australia. Uniqlo in Australia, which, by the way, retail in Australia is tough. It's a thing about the culture there as well. So this isn't purely Japanese companies, but it does. There were people who were commenting how Uniqlo in Australia had all the features of the worst aspects of Japanese culture combined with the worst aspects of Australian retail culture to just be this kind of horrible workplace. Low pay, abusive bosses. People felt like there was anti-white racism from Japanese expat managers. I do know I've worked in a Japanese-run retail company in New Zealand, and there is certainly a phenomenon that happens. I was talking about this on Twitter, and people pointed out that's not just Japanese abroad. This is expats everywhere. There is a funny thing when you work in a company in New Zealand, as I did with a lot of Japanese, 50, 60 Japanese who worked at this OK gift shop, this Japanese souvenir shop in Auckland. There were about 5, 6 New Zealanders and about 50, 60 Japanese. You get this funny community of people. You get the people who are just sort of traveling and don't really give a shit, and they're just going to be there for a couple of weeks and go away. There are people who are there because they don't fit in Japan, and they can't go back. There are people there just, the different sort of backgrounds of Japanese, but you do get a lot of people. The people who become most invested in the jobs outside of Japan and places like as managers of places like this are often people who, they just don't fit in back at home. They're not typical Japanese, and it's because of that they make this life. But at the same time, they often find that they don't fit in where they are in the new country either. So they create this bubble to protect themselves in the world that they get in this country. And the worst thing that happens, but it happens so often, is when expats who really are the worst qualified people to represent their home country become these huge proponents of what become the worst proponents of what their culture is overseas. And this happens. There were some of the managers that I dealt with were people who were working out issues, and they would take it out on the other Japanese staff. I always would joke, at least, at the end of the day I could go home and, I had other people to talk to. But for the people who are trapped in these little mini villages of frankly, what I know I'm pretty comfortable with, by and large not what I would consider to be typical Japanese, but yet would endlessly advocate that, we are Japanese, we work like this, you must never use a different colored pen on the signing credit cards, or you must fold this way, or do whatever, and I read this and it doesn't sound as bad as my old job, but I can see elements of it and I can relate to it. But at the same time, think about the people who come to Japan, who go to Europe, who go anywhere. Anyway, there's a news.com.au just talking about kind of a terrible work culture at Uniqlo in Australia, which is sad to hear. I love to pop into Uniqlo in Australia. It's nice to see something familiar and some familiar products, and it's nice to see something from Japan being successful. It does sound pretty awful. It sounds like they need to call Rochelle Cobb. Speaking of which, there she is. She had her working effectively with Japanese seminar this week. I hope that some of you got along. Remember that if you ever want to go, contact me, so you can get a 30% off promotion code, HICO30, if you don't remember it. 30% off from HICO30. And she's the person to call. We did another video this week. I messed up the go live timing of this last week, where I meant to put it up at 10:30 p.m. on Wednesday, and instead put it up on Monday, and I didn't realize till after the fact that it had gone live. I did do it at 10:30 p.m. on Wednesday this week, although I only remembered to do it just before it started, so nobody was really there, but I enjoyed watching it. It's a good episode, the mergers and acquisitions, which is my old job. We talked about it. It's pretty much like arranging international marriages, where I'm the wedding planner, and Rochelle is the marriage counselor. She deals with it when it goes wrong. I set it up, and I'm like, well, you guys are not going to work out. And we talked about that in the video, and it was a lot of fun. The final episode of this new series is coming up this Wednesday. Don't miss it. It's a great series, of course. And also remember, when you watch Japan Business Time, leave comments, like in the permanent comments, not just the live premiere comments. If you leave permanent comments on the videos, Rochelle and I will go through and we'll pick those up, and we will use those for when we record our next season, which we are talking about doing very soon. We have so much fun doing these, so this is built on your comments and your requests, so check it out. And I think this is a really great season, so make sure you don't miss that. Another big story this week, Pierre Taki, I don't know if that's his real name, but he is half of Denki Groove with Takeo Ishino. Denki Groove is one of my favorite bands. What are their bands? It's electronic music. These guys have been around since the 80s, like before techno or dance was even a thing. These guys were doing hardcore techno, hip-hop, EDM, crazy stuff. The first big concert I went to in Japan, I think, I got taken to a Denki Groove concert at Yokohama Arena. These guys do sort of, they do kind of a mix. Their beats are just crazy. Generally speaking, they're kind of German techno. They're kind of just, just hardcore kicks. high speed, and they just do this amazing, and Pierre is like the MC, and he just does this crazy floor show while Ishino is the guy who runs the turntables and the decks. And man, I was at Yokohama Arena, and there were like, how many people? I mean, there were tens of thousands of people. You know, I don't know if it was 60,000 people, I don't know if it's 80,000 people. So, you know, I mean, on the floor of a baseball stadium, and in the stands in the floor of a baseball stadium, on a 140 to 160 BPM, boom, 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 techno, and everybody. And this is the thing with Japan that's crazy: no drugs, no fights, no one being stupid, just 60,000 people dancing like crazy to this hardcore, fast techno. And then, you know, Pierre, this guy, convicted of cocaine use. I mean, it's not really surprising. Gets up on stage wearing a Mount Fuji costume with smoke coming out his head, and he starts emceeing over this techno, and everyone's just going apeshit, just being in with tens of thousands of people losing their shit dancing to this. And this isn't cheesy shit, this is like proper techno music, just like insane. I still think, I've been to Fuji Rock, I've been to some really good concerts, I've seen some amazing performances by musicians that I love, but man, well, Denki Groove just blew me away. It just sort of showed me, man, this country is just tits, pretty much. And unfortunately, what happens every now and then is that musicians get caught, they get arrested, and they admit to using drugs, not selling, not distributing, not you know, having huge amounts, but they confess. Police came ready. Someone reported to the police that he had cocaine in his house. They went there. They found it. He admitted it to the police. In later questioning, the police sort of, again, they always feed these things to the media. He said, "Yeah, I've been using cocaine for like 20 years and weed as well." This has gone out to the media, and you know, you have to understand, to the Japanese, he might as well have been like trading guns, or he could be Pablo Escobar, pretty much. The moment he confesses that he's used cocaine, you know, he's pretty much declaring himself outside of the law and rules of society. He's pretty much declared himself a mob, you know, syndicate lead, and that's the way they've treated him. And the kind of over-the-top sanctioning that the media does about this. It went from, of course, they cancelled all the upcoming Denki Groove concerts, and you know, which is pretty standard. All of his upcoming TV appearances were cancelled, also expected. I mean, he's going to be in jail probably. They cancelled some already recorded TV shows that were going to feature him. They're going to replace them with different shows, including in some cases shows of about people who died from drugs and so on. So yes, probably socially responsible. But then it got even further. It actually moved on to the music companies that are selling their CDs are actually recalling all of their CDs. And you know, again, there's kind of a hysteria about, I get it, they want to condemn, you know, drugs are bad, you know, they want to condemn, you know, drug use and not set a bad example, but you know, recalling all of Denki Groove CDs, are you crazy? And the thing is that drives me nuts about this is that the people who act the most outraged about this, and who are the ones calling the shots and recalling all of Denki Groove CDs, are they going to recall all the Beatles CDs? I mean, you know, geez, I mean, now compared to the 50s or 60s, you know, in Japan, let alone, I mean, even in Japan back then, you know, drugs, normally in Japan it's usually meth that you hear about, methamphetamine. It's actually really unusual to hear a story about cocaine. I've never heard of that. I've heard of weed. I mean, weed grows beside the highway in Hokkaido. It's an indigenous plant in Japan. Oh, and by the way, it was, you know, it was legal. It was grown everywhere. The emperor was the patron sponsor of hemp growers in Japan until after World War II. It was only under GHQ that weed was actually, well, that hemp was outlawed, and it was because America wanted to sell synthetic products to Japan. They wanted Japan to stop making so much hemp, so that they would buy rayon and stuff like that from America. And it was part of that they imported that from America. They're not following the legalization route. There's no, and this is maybe a reminder. Japan is not rational when it comes. There's no distinguishing between soft and hard drugs. There's no rationale about, you know, nobody dies from smoking weed, even though people die from tobacco and cigarettes. You know, so again, all I can say is that if you are here, you know, don't do it. Don't get caught. Definitely do not bring it here. You got no idea. You could bring a kilogram of cocaine. It would be the same as bringing one, smoke or even a cookie. Seriously, like, you do not want to get caught with the stuff in Japan, because this is how hysterical the reaction is. And the thing is that, look, these are the rules of the society, and you choose to live by them if you're here. But this level is too much, and I say this as someone who, I'm a huge Denki Groove fan, and look, he did it, of course, he broke the law knowingly, he deserves to be punished under the law, but the reaction is too much. It's just ridiculous. So I feel bad for Pierre, actually. It's not to say that he shouldn't do drugs, but damn, really, I mean, this is just crazy. So that happens. There's another thing. When I came to Japan, and by the way, here's an update. I've got another thing next week, on the 23rd. What is that? That is 6 days from now. On Saturday, I will have my 20th Japaniversary. I arrived in Japan continuously. I came here on multiple trips before, including 1998, 1995, 1990. I came here, but I came to live on a constant basis on March 23, 1999. So March 23, next Saturday, is my 20th anniversary in Japan. That's kind of a big deal. I feel like I should probably do something about that. I should record something. So that's coming up. And it occurred to me the other day, after reading this news story down here, that I remember, just when I got to Japan, one of the big things that was happening was there were all of these parents. It was like this big popular thing, in the recession, the end of the bubble, was all of these parents who decided that they would lighten up their lives by giving their kids ridiculous names. And, I don't know any moonbeams myself, but, it's kind of, if you want to give your kid, I must admit, to me, giving a kid a weird name is like giving them a tattoo when they're a baby. You're giving them something that has really profound implications for them for the rest of their lives. So, seriously, I mean, I'm not saying, John and Mary, but, think about it before you call them, Moon Humper or whatever. So, apparently the mother and father of this kid, who just went to the family court to get his name changed when he turned 18, to the resentment of his mother, he was called Oji-sama, which means prince. Now, I realize in English you say prince, and you think, hey, prince, he's cool, and hell, Michael Jackson, I think, called one of his kids that name. I'm not going into the MJ thing at all, don't worry about that. But Oji-sama is basically also like, if you watch like those kind of maid cartoons or whatever, and like you see like the rich sort of stuck-up boy character, and people, when they're like trying to flirt with them, they say Oji-sama. They say, oh, my prince. And that's what this mother called their baby, and this baby grew up, and basically his entire life he couldn't couldn't fill out a single form. He'd get stopped everywhere, security checks, because everyone assumed it was a fake name, and he had been mocked his entire life till he was 18. So he went to the family court to change his name to Hajime, a normal name, which was permitted, and his mum is now super angry at him. His dad said, well, he's an adult, he's allowed to change it. But got bullied his whole life pretty much for having this name that his mother just thought would be, like fun. Like, seriously, he's not a poodle, he's a kid. And yet, when I was a kid, when I first got to Japan, this was a big thing, hearing in the newspaper about the latest. They'd have rankings of the weirdest kira-kira, shiny names, and there were names, including there was a case where somebody wanted to call their son Akuma, literally the devil. He said he thought it'd be cool, and the family court actually rejected that name, and that made news. But the number of people who gave their kids weird names around like the year 2000, and all of these kids are suffering for it. They're coming through the system now, and they're suing their parents, and they're changing their names. And power to them. Go do that. Seriously, good on you, my prince with orange and red hair. Seriously, I mean, the orange and red hair you can change, right? But a messed up name, a joke name that a parent gave their baby, I mean, no, you can't get away with that. And seriously, parents, just think for a second. Cherry blossoms are out. They are going to be peaking exactly during the Hanami. So you saw Phoenix 787, he's organising it. I won't be able to be there. I'll probably be at the Nijikai a little bit late because I'm going to be in Hong Kong that day, taking my dad there. But no better time. I mean, this is probably the best timed Hanami we've had in like 10 years. Seriously, it's going to be awesome. So if you can come to Japan, if you're in Japan, enjoy those very, very good things. Tokyo Cheapo is a fantastic blog. It's actually run by a New Zealander. Not that that's the only reason you should look at it, it's just an awesome blog. It's not only focused on affordable, cool travel in Tokyo and Japan, but it's just a great travel guide. It's got so much great information. They really diligently, both of them actually, are updated every week. They have events themselves, as well as keeping up with events that are going on in and around Tokyo. It's an excellent blog. It's great to see them get featured by the Asian Media Center, and yeah, you should check that out. The slow-moving car crash that I've been kind of flagging for a while now about this sort of raw labor reparations case is happening now. The victims have applied for confiscation of assets of Japanese companies in South Korea to be able to pay off their compensation court winnings, more or less, and they've gone to the United Nations about this, seeking affirmation from the United Nations. To Japan, this is a violation of the Diplomatic Relations Treaty with South Korea, and Japan is now considering both taking international court action against South Korea to make South Korea basically fulfill what Japan sees as their obligations to indemnify Japan by covering the costs of the court case against these Japanese companies, which would be politically suicide for the Korean government. But the Japanese government is saying, hey, you got to do it. The other thing that Japan is also contemplating now doing out loud is imposing sanctions on South Korea through things, for example, immigration restrictions, and through taxing companies, Korean companies in Japan. It's pretty bad. I mean, it's in the whole 20 years I've been in Japan, this is about as bad as it gets. So, by the way, the J-Vlog, your ex's name was Misty Morning. The day of her conception. Yes, her parents were hippies. Was that in English? Was that her name? Well, I don't know. I mean, I must admit, the best one I've ever heard, you know how Chinese people, when they go to countries, they always like to adopt English names. Japanese people don't do this, but Chinese people do, and I think it's kind of cool as an adult if you're able to like adopt a name that you think is cool. It's not like up to your parents. That's kind of cool. But I remember hearing a friend come back saying, I met a girl last night and her name was Creamy. And pause. That wasn't a good choice. But yeah, Misty Morning. Well, Misty Morning's actually sounds kind of nice, although it sounds like it's from a certain profession that probably even hippie parents wouldn't want their kid to be. But yeah, I mean, it sounds lovely. So anyway, if you have a Japanese feature phone, an old flip phone or a feature phone, the one awesome thing about Japanese phones, particularly back in the days when they were feature phones and they were like leading the world, was that they had TV tuners built in, 1-sig TV tuners. People who are trying to get out of paying NHK by saying that they don't have a TV, the NHK person said, but you have a Japanese mobile phone that has a 1-sig tuner in it, so you have to pay NHK. And this person somehow was motivated enough and had enough free time to go to the Supreme Court of Japan, saying I shouldn't have to pay, if I don't have a TV, I don't have to pay NHK. However, the Japanese Supreme Court said, well, yes, if you have a 1-sig tuner on your phone, you're liable to pay for NHK, which means that the one reason to continue having a Japanese-made smartphone, which are now like 2% of the market share anyway, means that unlike an iPhone or a Huawei phone or anything else, you'll be subject to now paying NHK fees as well. So Supreme Court just pretty much torpedoed what was left of the Japanese phone-making industry. That said, NHK is also considering broadcasting online like all the time, which would be awesome, but then they're going to make anyone with an internet connection, i.e. smartphones, liable for the NHK fee. Broadcast fees are like this in Britain, they're like this in New Zealand, where they're sort of voluntary but not voluntary. I just wish they'd just come out and just make it a straight up tax, just take the ambiguity out of it rather than play the sort of cat and mouse around it. But certainly, yes, if you still have a Japanese phone, you better toss it out, perhaps. Toyota is going to make like an awesome, what do they call it? The luxury people mover. I'm trying to remember. It starts with A. Who knows this? What is they used to use a kind of famous French actor for advertising them. It starts with A. It's like not Alfredo, it's the L something. But in any case, it looks like they're going to put a lunar version of that on the moon by, when is it? By 2030. But they're going to cooperate with JAXA to put, originally at first it will be unmanned, but it will be able to basically between 2029 and 2034 they're going to put this this awesome looking like rover on the moon, which is going to be like pretty much like the Lost in Space, kind of like it's going to be a self-contained habitat where people can drive around and just go crazy. I like that. You know, they're going to take their sweet time about getting up there, but that is pretty cool. It looks like I love that space travel is like taking off. That is the South Korean news again. This was just kind of funny and stupid and pointless news story. Some survey was done in Japan as to women whether they would prefer a handsome poor person or a rich and bald person. There are some problems here that I feel like I probably shouldn't go back into too much detail about, but of course I wouldn't say that, you know, poor and bald and rich, rich and bald and poor and good looking are necessarily exact opposites. Okay, I mean, give us some credit. And I saw people reacting as you'd say, oh really, they wouldn't take a good looking person who is poor. Isn't that superficial? Well, which is superficial, right? I mean, preferring someone for looks or preferring someone for money, but it's all stupid, right? Basically, this is a stupid news story. But in any case, if you feel like you're in a country where poor good-looking people are basically always taking you out, and while you may not be good-looking and you may be follically challenged, you do know how to be like Walter White. You know how to get a lot of cash on short notice. You know, if you know how to generate some moolah, and you follically challenged, come to Japan, because 3 out of 4 women would totally go for you, it would seem. This is stupid, but it was kind of funny anyway, so I just wanted to put it in there. That guy, he's not a bad looking guy. Jeez, I mean, give the guy some credit, seriously. I mean, and isn't it personality, isn't it, you know, all the other things that really count at the end of the day. Elderly people are causing crashes, self-driving cars, please hurry up and get here. Japan needs you desperately. Japanese rice, underappreciated and overpriced. Yeah, I mean, Japanese rice is awesome, but you know, so it's like the Bugatti. But it doesn't mean you're going to drive one to the supermarket every day. Rice is something that you eat every day, and frankly, Japanese rice is priced like a Bugatti. You know, and falsely so. It costs, based on Japanese government subsidies, it costs 20 times more than what it should. So yeah, if we get to the day when the elderly, rich, subsidized farmers stop making rice and robots are making it, and rice in Japan is priced at market prices, Japanese rice will be the best in the world, and you'll probably find all over the world people will start growing the same rice as in Japan, because it is awesome, but it's not 20 times awesome. You know, so there you go. The Tokyo Olympics chief, I think I mentioned this last week, his time's pretty much up. He's pretty much admitted he's going to resign now, which could be seen as revenge for Gon, because he was indicted by French court the same week that, one of the weeks that Gon wasn't granted bail. At least he's not in jail. He should be thankful for that, perhaps, but he is on the way out. You might remember the Mt. Gox cryptocurrency exchange. Huge amount of money. How much was it? It was like, geez, $500 million or something went missing. It turns out, I mean, it appears that he was just basically incompetent, and you know, it's had a no security set up, and he was ripped off. But $429 million of Bitcoin disappeared, along with 2.8 billion yen cash. I see. So that's it seems that yeah, he was basically given a suspended sentence, i.e. the worst charges against him, that he took all the money, weren't made out. It does seem that the money, people are now saying maybe it was North Korea that pulled it off. Certainly, I think the story of this, Jake Adelstein has written a book about this, which might be an interesting read, actually. I must admit, I'm tempted to check that one out. It does appear that it was more incompetence rather than you know, actual outright embezzlement, as he was accused of. Final bit for the week. I promoted the Black Experience Japan last week, just not for being so much because it's about black people, just because, you know, they actually have a really diverse range of really interesting people talking in a very interesting way about their stories about being in Japan, and they're just great stories. These are just great Japan stories. And I promoted it for that, because the one last week I just thought was awesome. The one this week was actually even better. This guy's a Japanese citizen. naturalized Japanese citizen from America, but with in fact I don't want to get my stories mixed up, but yeah, from the South of America, came here, became Japanese citizen, really switched on guy, amazing story, and really worth watching. And again, this series, I don't know that we need to have a white experience Japan. I think we can find other lenses for this, but you talk about a good excuse to get a lot of really interesting people to just tell their stories. Fantastic choice storytelling, so I really do recommend this channel. Similarly, going back the other way, Japanese doing really well in America. Rui Hachimura is apparently doing awesome playing basketball in America. Looks like he's headed for the NBA. Doesn't speak English very well, but he's enormous, cool looking guy actually, and he's doing awesome, and again just adds to the awesome stories we have, including of course Naomi Osaka, half Japanese, of course grew up outside of Japan. There's a great article about her in The Undefeated. Also, Bio McNeil is featured in New York Times. I think I mentioned that last week. So there's good articles about people being successful in that regard. And that is the show. Boom. Have I seen the Abroad in Japan series, Androvsky? I of course, it's one of the biggest series on Japan that there are. So of course I'm familiar with it. I must admit I don't watch every single episode, but I do watch bits and pieces. But Chris Broad is awesome. That's one of the best things about Japan you can watch. So indeed, Androvsky, good to see. Oh, and thank you, by the way. I'm sorry, I realise I haven't been very interactive today, partly deliberately. But Dan H. Androvsky, I don't recognise the username, but welcome to the show. Good to see new names all the time. James Mackey, good to see you. Good to see Naruru in Japan. And all the other people, thank you for joining. I'm going to do a bit of an outro because I'm feeling like making some music. I set it all up because I figured I'd probably have to after this. Thank you for sitting through me talking about New Zealand. I don't intend to talk about it anymore for the reasons that I said. I do appreciate your indulgence of letting me do it, however. It's partly for my own therapy, I suppose. But really, please, if I could ask anything to make talking about it worthwhile, is do what I said. Don't talk about the guy. Do not say his name. If you see his stuff being shared, don't respond. Get it blocked. Report it. Flag it. Just wipe this guy out. Out of history. Don't. The victims don't need your anger. They need sensible actions. I'm really glad to see that's how New Zealand's taking it. That's how New Zealand's handling it. They're doing it the right way. I trust that's how it'll be handled. And spare thought for not just the victims of this, are really the entire city of Christchurch, the entire country of New Zealand, and frankly everyone beyond who's affected by this. And that's how it is nowadays. So do that. Support those people, and let's do it. Let's do an outro. Damn, I want to make an outro. Okay. Oh yeah, and the final thing is that the Tokyo Digital crew, we have been, the band is kind of getting back together a little bit. We are putting together the elements of a project that you're going to hear more about soon, and that is going to be awesome and fun. And there are some people in the chat here who know exactly what I'm talking about, and it's going to be awesome. So look out for that. And boom, let's get into it. Hey Kimbiko, that's right, you made it just in time, dude. Let's do this thing. I'm gonna make a new track. Okay, also later on. Boom, 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 boom. Let's do a new one. Okay, I'm gonna do a chill hop style because that's the kick that I've been on lately. So let's get some. In fact, I've got to, now that reminds me, I've got to go find the scratchiness. That looks like it. Let's make it 92 BPM. Let's get some sound up there. Cool. Let's get a beat. Let's do this as my tools then. Bit of a messy outro. That's the show. Could that make it a bit longer? Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for joining. That's Tokyo Tonight. See you again next week. Check out the final of Japan Business Time this Wednesday. And have a good one, everybody. Thank you for watching. Boom. Peace.